Great it is to see so many folk coming along to a meeting like this in Tamfourhill, which I think is a real testament to one of the things that I believe is a major strength of the Yes campaign. It's a major strength because it's unified people with a whole range of different views who come at the whole issue of Scotland becoming an independent country from different perspectives, whether it be as a socialist, a green, or whether you're an artist or you just believe that Scotland should be independent. It has brought together the nation in a way which I have never witnessed before, and it's brought people out into public meetings just like this in a way that I have never ever witnessed before. The last time I was in this hall for a public meeting of this size, it was to discuss the development of the Falkirk wheel. So I think it just demonstrates the real energy that the whole debate around the referendum in September has actually created. You know, I was chatting to somebody the other day there, and they said to me, why should Scotland bother being independent? What's the point in Scotland being independent? And that in itself seemed a rather, to somebody like myself, a bit of a daft question. But actually, for some folk, it actually is a real issue for them. Why bother becoming an independent country? And the reason I believe that Scotland should become an independent country is because I believe that the people that live and work in Scotland are the people who are best placed to decide on what's in the best interest of the people who live and work in the country. Sadly, for the majority of my adult life, I have had a political administration in Westminster that very often the people of Scotland didn't vote for. There is a democratic deficit in our country where we get governments in this country, in Scotland, that we never voted for in the first place. We've got a Conservative-led government in Westminster propped up by the Lib Dems, and the Conservatives in Scotland have got one MP to their name. If that doesn't illustrate the democratic deficit that we have in our country, I don't know what else will. And when I said to this person, that's one of the key reasons why I believe Scotland should become an independent country. His view was, well, what you need to do then is just change the system so it's more accountable for you. And what I've come to the conclusion of, and I'm sure many of you have come to this conclusion as well, is that Westminster is unreformable. Westminster will never ever change in order to make itself more democratically accountable to different parts of the United Kingdom. And the reason that it won't ever change in any significant way is because there are far too many vested interests in Westminster to change a system that they're quite happy with because they do quite well out of it. And the other reason is that you could say that we could simply give the Scots a few more powers for the devolved Parliament in Edinburgh. Always remember that devolved powers are powers retained by Westminster. Westminster, if they choose to, can switch the lights out in the Scottish Parliament tomorrow if they want to. It's based on a piece of legislation that was set through Westminster, and it can be changed by Westminster. But why do Westminster not really want us to have more powers here in Scotland in the devolved Parliament? Despite what they tell you in their big posters now, more powers for the Scottish Parliament, guaranteed. Guaranteed? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because we're now getting to the point where more and more people in Scotland recognise that if you want to make real change in the country, you need to get your hands on the real levers of power. And that's about economics, it's about welfare, it's about defence, and it's about making decisions in policy areas that they are definitely not going to allow us to get control of in a devolved Scottish Parliament. And why don't they want us to have powers in these matters? Well, they don't want us to have powers on economics. They certainly don't want that. And they don't want that because The Scots are too poor and they need us to help them. Well, we all know the reality is that it's been quite the opposite. Scotland has been paying its fair share for decades now, and it's about time we started using the money that we collect here in Scotland, that we generate here in Scotland, for the best interests of the people of Scotland. And if you were to believe that Scotland is just a land of whisky, and that we don't really have much more than that than tourism, yet again, you've been misled by those in the Better Together No campaign. Scotland is a country that is rich in wealth, not just in mineral wealth when it comes to oil and other resources, but it's a country that's also rich in its people and its people's talents. And it's about time we used our people's talents better for our needs here in Scotland. But even when it comes to mineral wealth, the No campaign would lead you to believe that we have the burden of oil, that terrible oil that causes such a financial burden for our country. They would lead you to believe that if Scotland became independent, it wouldn't be able to cope the volatility of oil in the North Sea. You know, there are countries in the world that would give their back teeth to have the resources that we have got in the North Sea and in the West Coast now as well. We need to make sure, in my view, that for the last 40 years, Westminster have had their share of Scotland's oil. And on the 18th of September, we get an opportunity to say, I want to take the next 40 years to make sure Scotland gets its share of the oil that it has within its seas. But even on top of that, we've also got the renewable energies. The renewable energy in both onshore wind, offshore wind, tidal power, wave power, leading the world in many of these areas. And we are now in a position where if we make the right investment into these energies, Scotland will be the powerhouse for renewable energy in Europe. So we're a rich country in its people, in its resources, and in the future that we have going forward. And why don't they want us to have control over things like welfare? Well, they don't want us to have control over welfare because they don't think we can manage that either. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that's happening in this country just now is that we used to have a welfare system that was there to help to support people in their time of need. That when somebody required a bit of support, we had a system that would actually support them and their family. What do we now have? We have a food bank less than half a mile along the road in Tamfourhill Industrial Estate. More and more people use it. One of the busiest food banks in Scotland. And why is it one of the busiest food banks in Scotland? Because of the way in which the Westminster government are destroying our welfare system in this country. Destroying it, they do under the guise of austerity. We can't afford the Westminster welfare system we've got just now at this present time. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's not about that we can't afford it. It's ideologically driven because they want to destroy the welfare system because they don't believe in the welfare system and helping to support individuals, and they're using austerity as a cloak to hide the destruction of the welfare system in Scotland. And if we don't stand up and address these issues, it will lead to, as the Joseph Rowntree Foundation have said, it will lead to 100,000 more children in Scotland being in poverty by 2020. 100,000 more children in poverty by 2020 because of the policies that they're pursuing. And if you think it's bad now, well, remember, George Osborne, just a couple of weeks ago, said he's got another £12 billion of cuts he wants to introduce into your welfare system. And we've got individuals now, constituents that I have to deal with and help, finding that they have to leave their house because of the bedroom tax that they've introduced and have imposed in Scotland, that was never needed in Scotland, but has been imposed in Scotland, forcing people out of their house because they don't believe in the welfare system and supporting people within their own homes and their own communities. And why don't they want us to have control over defence? Well, they don't want us to have control over issues like defence because they're quite happy in having trident nuclear missiles about 30 miles from where we are here tonight. The biggest nuclear arsenal that there is in the northern part of Europe. And why are they quite happy to have them there? Well, obviously Scotland's the best place to have them. But not even that, if you believe the nuclear weapons. They tell us that we need nuclear weapons to act as a defence of anybody attacking the country. Let's keep in mind, nuclear weapons aren't a defence mechanism. Nuclear weapons are a first strike system. They're about hitting the other person first, rather than waiting for them to attack you. And let's keep in mind that if you start a nuclear war, nobody wins. We're all finished. And that's the reality of what nuclear weapons are all about. But keep in mind, just to keep them nice and shiny in Faz Lane, it's costing us, the taxpayer, £150 million a year. And to replace it with the new system, it's going to cost us £100 billion a year. Well, I'll tell you what, in September the 18th, you've got an opportunity to decide upon whether you get rid of things like the bedroom tax, stop another 100,000 kids getting into child poverty, and getting rid of nuclear weapons. That's the opportunity that faces Scotland, and I hope you'll take it on the 18th of September.